Hello, this is Political Forum for Wednesday, February 25th. We welcome today as our guest Alden Loury of the Better Government Association. Thank you so much for appearing on Political Forum, Mr.
Thanks for
Loury.
having me.
I'm Teresa Cordova, board member of CAN TV. This is a live interactive program brought to you as a community service of CAN TV, and we do encourage you to call us. You can call us at 312-738-1060. Tonight we're going to be discussing the results of last night's elections. So during this time, you call us and we'll be able to, as best we can, get in your questions and your comments. Mr. Loury, exciting night, huh?
It was a very exciting night. I should start by saying it was a little disappointing in terms of the turnout. Looks like we just barely beat what would have been a record low voter turnout. But from the people who did turn out and vote, I think we saw a lot of energy, people exercising their power. The overriding theme was the vast amount of money that was spent, particularly in the mayoral election, by Mayor Emanuel, and the fact that more than 50% of citizens, despite being bombarded with commercials, being bombarded with printed materials, overwhelming, glowing reports about the job that the mayor had done, people decided that they thought differently, and they chose one of the other four candidates. And I think that's a healthy exercise. If people aren't happy, they need to realize that they do have power, going out to the polls and exercising their power by voting for their candidate of choice. And 55% of Chicagoans felt that way, despite the overwhelming support and money that was spent to back the mayor's campaign. So that's a good sign. And what we now have is a runoff with two very well-versed candidates, two people I think that are very effective and can be good leaders for the city of Chicago. And now they will have to go into further detail about how they will help bring the city together, bring more diversity in a number of the things that the city is doing, but also to help the city get out of some of the financial struggles that it has, and issues with crime, issues with development, particularly in some of the minority neighborhoods. So those are all issues that these candidates are going to have to provide greater detail on, and hopefully the citizens will be out in force to hear where they stand on the issues, and then they will come out on April 7th and ultimately decide who the next mayor of Chicago will be.
So we have a runoff coming April 7th, and we've got running against Mayor Rahm Emanuel is Commissioner Jesus Chuy Garcia. So Commissioner Garcia is a member of the Cook County Board of Commissioners,
Yes.
former state senator, former alderman. So he is no stranger to politics and no stranger to governing.
No, not at all. And I think he showed that during the campaign and during their debates. He held his own quite well, speaking about the issues. Not only does he have that background in government, but he has a very solid background in the community. Leader of the Little Village Community Development Corporation, which now known as Enlace, and he has a very almost mythic-like stature in Little Village. And Pilsen and that part of town for the work that he's done on a community level. And I think there were a lot of people during the campaign that shined through, and they decided to cast their vote for him because they believe he may be a better choice on a neighborhood level. And the mayor will have to respond to that, and he's got a lot of work cut out for him to maybe make that case.
So what is it you think that he needs to do in particular? For example, do you think that giving the message that he will be open to business in Chicago, that he can be friendly to the business community? Do you think that's something that is important for him to provide that message?
Well, Commissioner Garcia certainly has spent a lot of time talking about being passionate about his desire to bring prosperity to all neighborhoods in Chicago. But yes, he will have to show also that he can continue bringing the stability not only to the downtown business core, but also in terms of managing the city's finances. $5-6 billion budget, a structural deficit that's lower than it was a few years ago, but it's still a problem. A mounting pension debt, over $20 billion of unfunded pension liability in the city's four major pension funds, a $550 million pension payment that has to shore up the police and fire pension funds in the next year. So there's a lot of money issues that the city has to deal with, and Commissioner Garcia is going to have to show that he can keep the city in the type of position that it needs to be in order to provide or generate the revenue to pay those things, and also shoring up some of the issues with regard to crime and some of the neighborhood issues that he spoke a great deal about during his campaign.
We have our first caller. Caller, you are on the line.
Oh yeah, I read somewhere that I think Alderman Burke has something like $8 million in his election fund, and I imagine maybe even some of the other mayoral candidates had money left over from their campaigns. Are they allowed to share those funds with other candidates or spend them to help them in any way?
Yes, they can. There may be some limits in terms of how much they can share with each individual candidate in each individual election cycle, but yeah, they're certainly open to sharing the wealth, and that's something that has been done a great deal in Chicago and Illinois politics over the years. Most notably in this most recent election, there was a super PAC that was set up. We have it on good authority that it was set up by allies of the mayor, and they spent over $700,000 for aldermanic campaigns in more than 30 wards. So, that's just one example of the ways that money can be raised by one entity and then shared with the campaigns of others.
So Mayor Emanuel did not receive 55% of the votes. What does he need to do differently? Why do you think that was, and what do you think he needs to do differently?
Well, there's a lot of attention that's been paid on Mayor Emanuel's bedside manner, the ways in which he communicates and talks with people. I think that may be a part of the issue. He certainly has a gruff demeanor, but there are some people in Chicago, I think, who appreciate that, who think that the mayor of Chicago should be a hard-charging force, someone who stands behind a decision, doesn't take no for an answer, and doesn't waffle when public opinion is pushing back against them. I think the problems for the mayor go.
Although this is a city that likes to be respected.
That's true, and that's a very good point. One of the things in particular that I think that hurt the mayor was the school closures decision was an incredibly emotional loss for a lot of people around the city, and they may have disagreed with the mayor's opinion on that, but I think a lot of people disagree with the way the mayor kind of approached the entire scenario. There were people who were literally pouring their hearts out to try to keep their schools open, and I think came away with the feeling that the mayor and his school board were very tone deaf to that emotional outpouring of support for those schools. And so it's not just that his bedside manner may need some he may need to improve that on some level, but is he really listening to people? If people don't feel like they're being heard, they're going to turn in other directions.
People do want to be listened to. He did say today that it was part of the passion, that he didn't expect that he was going to change his character, but that it was part of his expression of his passion. We have another caller. Caller, you are on the line.
Hi, my question is, with 6 weeks to go, do you think if Fioretti and Wilson and Doc Walsh throw their support behind Chuy Garcia, do you think it will improve his chances of winning?
Yes, I think it will improve his chances of winning. Will it be enough for him to win? I would say no. He's going to need more than that. Keep in mind that with 33% turnout, there's still a vast section of the electorate that did not come out to vote, that may come out to vote in April. And so both these candidates are going to have to appeal to those voters. One, they're going to have to say enough to give people confidence that it's worth the time and effort to come out and give their support to those individuals. And then two, they're going to have to speak, I think, more directly to some of the issues that may be of concern to people in different parts of town. There are certainly issues that are happening in Inglewood that would bring people out if they felt like there was a candidate that was going to deal with those issues. The same way there are people in Streeterville and other parts of town who have issues and want a candidate, a mayoral candidate, who's going to address those things.
We have another caller on the line. Caller?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I know that voters were asked, some voters in wards were asked about reducing the influence of special interest money when it comes to these elections. I know that Rahm spent, millions of dollars on his TV ads, and it really didn't go anywhere because we didn't have a lot of people come out to vote. So what can we do, or what do you think can happen to help, reduce the amount of influence when it comes to this money?
That's a very good question. It's a very difficult question. I don't know the exact answer to that. The referendum is one idea that's being floated and has had great success in some places. Essentially, the notion of small donor financing, and the way it works essentially is that for small donations of a particular size or less. In New York City, I believe the threshold is $175. When people give that amount or less, that amount is matched from a fund of publicly financed dollars. In New York, it's a 6-to-1 match, so a $150 donation is matched with a $900 donation from this pool of public financing. And so it really grows the power of small donations, and it puts an emphasis or incentivizes candidates to go out and get money from regular everyday folks who don't have thousands of dollars to spend in a campaign, but they may have 50, they may have 100, they may have $200 to spend. And so it's really worth the while to go out and get those $200 if you know that it is going to be matched with another $1,000, $1,200 or so. So that's the idea of that. That's one approach. Another approach is for there to be caps, for there to be greater disclosure about public finance or about campaign donations, so that people are aware where there may be potential conflicts of interest.
Where the money's coming from.
And so that when a red flag is raised, it can be made public and in a way kind of shame people into not taking those kinds of contributions. But legally, there's a limited amount that can be done to limit the influence of money. But I think one of the great things to limit the influence of money is for people to hear it and then to not hear it, and to still go out and still vote and cast a ballot for whoever they think is the best person for the job. And, that can trump money. And I think yesterday people should walk away with the feeling that a lot of Chicagoans, those who participated, that was part of the message that they delivered, that money can only get you so far. At the end of the day, the vote is more powerful than money.
And there were a lot of new registered voters, were there not, in the last few months?
There were. The number of registered voters in the city of Chicago was up over 1.4 million, which was an increase over what it was in November. And with 6 weeks before the runoff, there's time for people to get registered and be prepared for the April 7th race.
We're speaking with Alden Loury from the Better Government Association, and we have another caller on the air. Caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
I was a judge during the election,
Good for you, thank you.
and it was like a low turnout of voting. I think about 98 people came on our ward, and it wasn't a lot of young people wasn't voting. And I asked some young people basically in the college why they want to vote. They say it really doesn't matter either or who wins, because, it's going to be the same price. They sort of they just talking and they're not really doing what they're going to say. So basically what I'm trying to say is, why is a lot of low turnout of voters and why not of young people not voting?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the reason you heard is a reason that's shared by a lot of people. I can remember being, 18, 19 years old, and having an opportunity to vote and not voting, because the thought was, what difference does it make? The conditions in my neighborhood don't change.
When I was 18, you couldn't vote.
Oh, wow. I think that's a very common sentiment, and it's not just among young people. There are a lot of older people who don't vote because they believe it just doesn't matter. And on some level, they're right, and that may be sacrilege to say. Voting isn't all that people have to do. There is a lot of power in voting, as I was just saying earlier, but that's not our only job as citizens. Not only do we have to go out and vote, but we have to be participatory. We have to be involved. We have to go to city council meetings or watch them online, or at least read about them in a newspaper. We have to make calls to our alderman, to our state representative, to our mayor. We have to express ourselves, the things that we don't like, the things that we want to see happen. We have to be actively engaged, not just on election day, but throughout the year. We have to make sure that the folks that we elect hear us on a consistent basis so they know what we want, and when they don't do what we want, then we bring the hammer down on Election Day. Election Day is decision day, but it's not the only day of action for citizens and for people in Chicago and the state of Illinois.
Do you think that the 55% that did not vote for Rahm Emanuel were also making a statement that they care about their government, they care about the public, and they don't want public education, public resources stripped away from them?
I mean, I think there are myriad reasons why people did not cast their vote for the mayor, and I mean, I think some of what you mentioned are some of those reasons. That there could be a host of others. Like I said, I think the fact that there was more than a majority of people who did not vote for the mayor, despite, the level of money that was spent and all of the airtime that he got, I think is an example of people, kind of having their own mind about things and going out and expressing that with regard to their vote. The reasons why they chose someone other than the mayor, I think probably include the reasons you gave and perhaps many more.
We have another caller. Caller, you are in the air.
Hello, good afternoon. My question is there any data to show the breakdown of voters by race, and what can Garcia and Emanuel do to reach to Latinos and African American voters?
There is data available, maybe not directly about race. So you won't find any data that says here's exactly how African American voters voted, because when people go to the polls, there's nowhere where people indicate what race they are.
Were there exit polls taken?
I'm not aware of any, but there very well may have been some exit polls. I haven't seen any results. That is one way to kind of get a sense of how people of individual racial groups or other demographic groups, age, gender, so on and so forth, voted. One thing that you can glean, though, because Chicago, sadly, is so segregated, there are a number of wards in the city of Chicago that are majority African American, that are majority Latino, that are majority white. And so looking at the results of those particular wards can give you a sense of how, generally speaking anyway, people of different racial demographics voted in this race. The ChicagoElections.com is the website of the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago. They have a very extensive kind of results page that will show you a breakdown of the votes by ward, a breakdown of voter turnout by ward, and even by precinct within those wards. But yeah, if you look at the results by ward, you can get a sense of where people voted and who they voted for.
Well, Commissioner Garcia has a long history of coalition work with African Americans and European Americans that goes back for really pretty much the extent of his political career. And do you think that that played into some of this?
It does, and I'm sorry. The caller did kind of have a second half of that question, which was what can Mayor Emanuel and Commissioner Garcia do to kind of get votes from African Americans and from Latinos, and I think quite simply it's to to address the needs of those communities. So we know that the mayor lost a lot of support in African American communities because of the way he handled the school closing. So people care fiercely about education in those neighborhoods, despite what the common perception might be. They also care very fiercely about crime, and I think there was a growing sentiment, particularly on the south and west sides, about red light cameras and people being kind of nickel and dimed with the fees from those things. So if we're going to, as a city, we need revenue, I think the thought is, are there other ways we can do it, because $100 ticket here and $100 ticket there can be very difficult for people to manage, particularly if they're on a very low income or on a tight budget. So I think people would want to hear, well, how do we do that? Can we lose that revenue stream and come up with other ways to draw that revenue? But they also want to know, how do our schools improve? How do our streets get safer? And that's something that Mayor Emanuel and Commissioner Garcia both will have to address, particularly in African American communities, also with Latino communities. Those are chief concerns as well there.
So we have another caller with another question. Caller.
Yes, hello. I wanted to say that I did not vote for Rahm Emanuel because he messed me up on my pension, because we count on the retirement funds, and this guy takes from my pension, gives us a raise at the beginning of the year, gives us a raise, takes that plus some of my pension money, takes that, and then all of a sudden, I can't make ends meet ends.
So the issue of how are we going to deal with people's pensions? There are a lot of people, I think, as this caller expressed, there are a lot of people who are very concerned about loss of income as it relates to their pension and other kinds of cuts that they're experiencing, low wages, loss of jobs, or maybe only part-time work and so on. So as we think about what it's going to take to provide some of the basic services that are needed in the city, both for economic development and just as some services to provide to people throughout the city, including the neighborhoods, there's going to have to be some thought about how we finance that. Is that right?
Oh, without a doubt. Pensions are an enormous problem. Like I said earlier, $20 billion unfunded pension liability. That's how much the city is behind on where it needs to be to fully fund the four major city pensions for municipal workers, laborers, police, and fire. And the mayor had gotten a law passed in the General Assembly in Illinois down in Springfield that seeks to reform the way pension payouts are for the municipal workers and the laborers. Both major unions of those groups have filed lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of those plans. The mayor had to pass a telephone tax increase to help pay for the increased city payouts to those pension funds over the next year. Problem is there are 4 additional years where revenue will be needed. He had talked about a property tax increase at one time, but wasn't able to get the political support in Springfield to get that through. So there's still a lot of questions about that. And if those plans are struck down by the Illinois Supreme Court or by some other branch of the court, then the city's back to square one, and that's going to be a major problem. I mentioned also on top of that, there's a mandated $550 million payout to the police and fire pension funds that is due in 2016. But those pensions also have to be dealt with in some form of fashion. A lot of people who rely on those plans don't want to see it changed at all. The problem for whoever the mayor is for the city of Chicago now and moving forward is, well, how do we chip away at that $20 billion pension hole without taking severe cuts to other parts of the budget that the city deeply relies on to fund police officers on the street, to fund schools, to fund other parts of city government. It's a real conundrum. It's not just facing the city of Chicago. It's facing suburban municipalities. It's facing the state of Illinois also.
So it's a big problem.
It's a huge
It's a
problem
problem
across
that's
the
on
board.
people's minds, and we've got several callers, and which is a really wonderful sign of how much people care about these issues. So let's take our next caller. Hi, caller. Hi.
Results show that voters overwhelmingly support an elected school board. What influence do you think the referendum will have if Emanuel is reelected as mayor?
That's a good question, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's possible that it could have very little effect, and it's possible it could have a tremendous effect. What the referendum shows is that public sentiment is very strongly in favor of an elected school board. And so if Mayor Emanuel continues to hold firm with the thought that the system that we have now is representative and we don't need an elected school board, people have the vote that happened yesterday to put back at him and say, well, you know, a vast majority of Chicagoans think differently.
And it sure gives the state legislators the political support that they would need if they were going to take this on and get this passed. Let's go on to our next caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good evening. I wish your program, first of all, was on a little bit later or more, another hour or so. But my question is, I am so appalled. Being American Mexican descent, I always say American because I'm born and raised here in the United States. So were my parents. I am appalled at these politicians, Luis Gutierrez, Anita Alvarez, Susan Mendoza, all of these Mexicans, instead of supporting the person that should be in office. Because with Rahm Emanuel, Chicago belongs to him and all his cronies. It doesn't belong to us. So how dare they say that we should go out and vote for Rahm Emanuel?
Thank you, caller. Appreciate your comments. We've got another caller waiting. Caller on the air.
Yes, my question, thank you for taking the call. My question was, you mentioned a few minutes ago that there are 4 different pension plans. I was wondering, number one, why are there 4 different pension plans? Who are covered under these 4 different plans? Are all 4 of them coming up as a shortfall? And is there some place that I can go look at this information myself online?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure why there are 4 different pension plans. I mean, they cover 4 different classes of workers. Firefighters are one, police are the others. Laborers and municipal workers are kind of larger groups that encompass a number of different types of workers. I want to say that $20 billion unfunded liability is split about half and half. Police and fire are about $10 billion of that. Municipal workers and the laborers are about the other $10 billion. Maybe off a little bit with that, but it's about half and half between those two groupings of that overall 4. The city publishes what they call annual financial analyses, which will give you a good deal of information about all of those pension plans. The Better Government Association has done some investigations about unfunded pension
And on that note,
liability.
I do want to serve, as we're wrapping up here,
Sure.
unfortunately we do, because then it goes very quickly, doesn't it?
It does.
But I want to thank so much Alden Loury with the Better Government Association. And I really want to thank all of the callers who've taken their time to not only listen and participate in tonight's program, but also to support CAN TV. You know, this is the Political Forum. We present this program to you as part of our community service of CAN TV, and we're very, very excited that CAN TV is such an important part of our community and is an important part of promoting public access TV. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate your calling in this evening. And if you're not registered to vote, you have a little bit of time to do that before the next election. And we'll be talking about electoral politics, aldermanic politics, over the next few weeks, and getting ready for April 7th. So thank you very much, Alden Loury, for
Thanks.
being here from the
Cheers,
Better
Kathy.
Government Association. Thank you and good night. Thank you, Sylvia. We forgot to do this. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
But man, that was nice.